Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Waxcast, episode 13, Unlucky 13. Well, at least it's not Friday. And today I am joined by a friend of mine, a YouTuber, a conservative commentator, Angel Quiroz. I said it right. And I wanted to bring him on to talk about big tech, censorship, 230, and kind of the debates within, the conservative movement, debates among Republicans about this topic. I mean, we're living in the digital age, and not a lot of attention gets brought to this issue. I don't think. I think a lot of people have this sort of laissez-faire, live and let live approach, and everything's fine. Just go start your own tech company, so to speak. But they don't understand the implications for free speech. They don't understand the implications for being able to be politically relevant in the modern era. And it's sad because we've seen a lot of independent voices and free thinkers be silenced. And it's destroyed. It's probably hurt our election chances in 2020. It's probably done a lot of damage to people's careers, to people's livelihoods, the whole thing. So, Angel, thank you for coming on and talking with us today.
Man, thank you for being here, man. It's an honor.
So you're a YouTuber. You dabble with a few different things. You just spoke down. Was it in DC? Was that speech I was just listening to? Yeah, you just spoke down in DC about big tech, the censorship. What's your perspectives on it? Are you in the camp that says that we can't really do anything? They're a free company. Let them do what they want to do. Or are you more on the side of listen, like they're getting special protections, they're getting special carve outs from the government, they're not operating in the free market, and they're abusing their power, and they should be held to account? Where do you stand?
Yeah, well, I think you hit the nail on the head in the beginning with your intro, where you said the political relevance is important. I kind of take it a step further, and I think that cultural relevance is just as important. And if we kind of remove ourselves from the equation as conservatives, then we are essentially giving over the reins to like a big tech oligarchy that has these big links to the Democrat Party, and removing ourselves from the public square. I think what ends up happening with social media and conservatism is we want to follow the rules, we want to buy into the free market, and those things are amazing, but the way that the system is set up, it's set up in a way that certain ideas are being censored, and the opposite of those ideas are the ones that are running the culture right now. So if I want to make an impact as a conservative, or me personally as a Christian, I need to be in the place where people have their attention. And so I'm definitely not in the camp of like, hey, just start your own tech company. I do think it's important to kind of diversify your platforms and, be on Parler and Clapper and all these things. But I think it's just as important to kind of stay and fight that fight.
I didn't even know what Clapper was. I mean, here I am. I mean, I know Parler, and Clapper sounds like the clap or some disease. But look, get on all of it. I like it. Diversify your portfolio, like you diversify, your financial investments, whatever it is. It's always a good strategy. But I agree with you. I think the idea of people retreating into like these ideological ghettos where you have just conservatives, you just have liberals. That's not good. That's not healthy. That doesn't encourage discourse. That doesn't encourage debate. If conservatives just have their own social media network, that's not what I want. That's lame. I want to see other opinions. I want to see other voices, mostly to make fun of them, but also because, you never know. Sometimes you may hear something that you weren't aware of. And if you're in these little corners like that, that's never going to be a good platform. That's never going to really succeed. It's always going to be kind of a smaller type of affair. But I really like the point you made about the culture, because I think Republicans and conservatives tend to make this mistake that we view everything through a political lens, right? And we don't fight the culture wars anymore. We don't fight them as well. And we just think about things just purely political. But big tech has been big tech, big media has been a driving vehicle in pushing sort of an anti-Christian, an anti-religion, an anti-American tradition sort of viewpoint. And it's part of like this left's war on the culture. And until we can reclaim these platforms, reconquista these platforms, we're never going to push back, and we're always going to be on the back foot. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the left as a whole, and I've mentioned this before, they're amazing at branding. They're amazing at marketing. They do that so well, mostly because they have those people at their disposal. You do have these huge companies like Twitter and even Netflix and Hollywood itself. They're all creatives, and I think conservatives tend to be more left-brain thinkers, right? They tend to be more organized. They want to structure things, and so the creativity kind of dissolves away when in reality that's what kind of draws people to whatever platform it may be Twitter was big because, you know, celebrities started using it, and you got to see the behind the scenes of all of these different people. Take it all the way back to MySpace and Friendster. You got to experience a different side to celebrities that you would never have access to otherwise. So I think we need to capitalize on that as conservatives and really say, what was it about these platforms that made them popular in the first place, and reverse engineer that and use that to our benefit. But at the same time, fight this legal battle, like you mentioned in the beginning with 230, where we also fight the battle of politics and even legislating morality.
Amen. I would love to legislate morality. I mean, that's a broader discussion. Maybe we'll delve into it at the end. But I one point you did make just now that I like, it's talking about, you know, left brain versus right brain, and there certainly is a psychology to being a conservative and being on the right politically. But I think it comes with benefits and it comes with disadvantages. The number one disadvantage I can think of is that we have a lack of creative talent on the right. I mean, certainly there is creative talent, but it doesn't get utilized as much as the left does, and it certainly doesn't exist to the degree. We don't have that creative capital. I mean, you look at Obama's campaign with his iconic poster. You look at, like you said, the branding, the marketing, how they engage with digital. I mean, they were the first to really do social media. They were the first to really get out and take advantage of all this emerging social media platforms, whatever it is, for their political campaigns.
Yeah, I mean, Obama used a famous graffiti artist for his campaign, Shepard Fairey of Obey. You know, those are things that I think we're lacking a little bit on the right, just being able to take our creatives and push them to the forefront, because they're the ones that kind of dictate the way the culture swings. I think
Weaponize them.
Weaponize them. That's an amazing word. You know, people like, now that Kanye is coming up to the forefront and talking about conservatism and religion and all these things, instead of pushing him away and saying, well, you don't have exactly the right ideas, we should be utilizing his art and how amazing he is at that. You know, those are just simple things that I think we need to focus on more as a conservative movement, because they're becoming our Achilles heel, I guess.
Agreed. I mean, we need his dragon energy. I wrote an article about a year ago, said the GOP needs an infusion of Kanye's dragon energy, because if we're just like these lame people that don't understand where the culture is heading, don't understand the media, and don't know, and are living 20 years in the past, how can we expect to win? How can we expect to change minds, win over hearts and minds, and build a winning coalition? It's just not going to happen. We need to find that creative talent, and we need to utilize them. I mean, even the little things that the left does, I mean, it may be little, but brilliant in the grand scheme of things. Right. Just how they name themselves. Right. Antifa, anti-fascist. You're already on the back foot, because now you have to be like, oh, you support fascism, and some stupid people think that. Black Lives Matter. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And you're always on the back foot. It's like almost asking, it's like, tell us why do you beat your wife? It's like, what do you mean? What do you mean? You have to repeat the question. So they get this. They've learned the psychological ins and outs. They've learned the branding. They've learned the marketing, and they've mastered it. And we're just playing second fiddle. But in addition to that, we started to get into it, the legislative fights, 230 specifically. If me and you wanted to start a newspaper, you know, the Wax Angel Times, and we published something that attacked our mutual friend Andres, and we said Andres does not look like Salt Bay, he could sue us. Right. He could come after us and be like, you know, you defamed me. I make a lot of money because people think I'm Salt Bay. You can't come after me, blah, blah, blah. We have liabilities. You have to hire lawyers, whatever. We get taken to court of law. We could win, we could lose, but it's a cost, and we're going to moderate what we do as such. Twitter, all these big tech, they have this carve out that only exists in big tech, where they're protected from liability. They're protected from what they publish. In exchange, they can't editorialize. They said, okay, listen, we'll treat you like a platform. We'll treat you like you're not responsible for the opinions on your site, but you can't editorialize. You can't promote one viewpoint. They're doing that at large. They're censoring the president. I can't even go retweet them without having to read an essay. I mean, are they not in violation of the very law they claim to be wanting to uphold?
Right. Well, that's the irony in it, is that they're trying to uphold these moral standings and these moral laws, but they're not responsible to anybody. So you get these fact checkers that are pretty much just using their opinion or like a Vox article from 10 years ago to justify why this specific post is problematic, or why you need to read up on these newfound things before you post something. I got a YouTube video deleted last night, and it was just because I had something about the illness. I won't say it on this podcast just in case. I don't want to get you banned. That's going around right now, and it was a Santa Claus talking about it. It was all a joke. It was kind of a bit that we were doing, and they took it down just out of nowhere. I had no say in it. I had no ability to even counter that, and it was just out of nowhere, and there was nothing I could do about it. Those kind of handcuffs are the things that that we should be fighting against, simply because these are the main platforms that are driving our culture. And if I would take that and go onto Rumble, it's not going to have the same impact. Nobody that doesn't believe in what we believe in is going to see it, to your point about the echo
Right.
chamber. So that's where I kind of stand on issues like that.
Yeah, and I mean, when you have a situation like that, I mean, it just goes. You can't do something like that with traditional utilities. Everyone wants to talk about traditional utilities, like phone calls. The phone company can't ban you because you wanted to call and talk about
Right.
the disease that shall not be mentioned and make fun of it in some way. So if I had a phone call with you, I'm fine. I'm protected. The free speech applies to utilities. But these tech companies, these tech platforms, they are the biggest driver of communication. I mean, I don't even use text messaging. I use Facebook Messenger attached to my phone as my text messaging. I use that sometimes more than email. I do all my communication, public facing through Twitter. I mean, the biggest form of expressing yourself and engaging with the world and talking to other people is through social media, is through digital. It should be treated as a utility. It should be regulated as a utility. And look, I'm not a free market absolutist.
Right.
I'm not an anarchist. I believe in a role for the state. And I believe that if we're going to have free speech, it shouldn't just be, okay, yeah, you can have free speech, but we'll ban you, we'll cancel you, we'll take away your job, we'll take away your livelihood, and you'll be forced to live off beans for the rest of your life. But you can have free speech and talk to nobody and have no audience. That's not free speech.
That's a funny critique that I get from the left all the time. Is like, well, don't you believe in free speech? Don't you believe in the free market? Why is it that you want to change the rules for Facebook, even though they're a private company?
Rich coming from them.
Yeah, exactly. Which is funny to me, because we're not for anarchy. Like you said, we're not anarchists by any stretch. I think that there is a proper role for the government to come into these companies and really showcase what the actual rules should be. That we have to find a new way to delicately structure this echo chamber that we call the internet. Because if not, it's going to become something that in real life has consequences. I mean, we're seeing it already with people losing their jobs, with people getting doxxed. We're seeing consequences of online activity offline, even human sex trafficking and things like that.
Yep.
So we need to find a delicate way to say, all right, there is a place for government within these companies, but we don't want to crack down on it and have it be something that is super restrictive. We have to find that balance.
Yeah, and I think that's a common sense approach. I mean, finding that middle ground, doing this in a moderate way. I think the vast majority of Americans, if they were explained what we just talked about clearly, they would be on the same page with us. I think there would only be a minority of people who would be into the camp of don't touch it, leave it alone. And most of them are probably going to be on the payroll of some big tech lobbyists. And there's the other group of people who probably want to just, completely, dismantle the whole free market system. So there's a balance to be made. And we do that for so many other facets of society. We've done that historically for every emerging technology, emerging industry, all these different things. But now for one of the most influential industries, one of the most influential aspects of modern life, we're like, oh, hold hands off. Let's just see how it goes.
And there's the old leftist, I wouldn't even say leftist, I'd say more so liberal critique of free speech. That's just kind of like, well, or censorship rather. It's like, kind of says, well, if you have nothing to hide, why do you care if you're being monitored or censored? If you're not saying anything wrong, then you shouldn't be mad that somebody's getting censored. And to me, I find that to be not only a lazy argument, but a super arrogant argument. Because what happens if one day people wake up, or the government wakes up and decides that vegetarianism is bad for society? All these vegetarian pages are going to be, cracked down. And I'm assuming more leftists are vegetarian. I'm going to stereotype.
It's probably bad for society, but continue. Yes, continue.
Yeah, so I'm gonna make that huge leap and jump to that conclusion, and there's gonna be hell to pay with leftists. They're not going to enjoy that, and that's all we're voicing. My only opinion is to say that my specific views, as a religious person, are being cracked down on, and I don't agree with that.
It is an extraordinarily lazy argument to just be like, well, if they're censored, they must have done something bad. It's like, well, who's doing the censoring? Why don't you extrapolate that argument, buddy? Why don't you go and see, well, do they have a bias? Or are these people uncorruptible? Are they infallible? Are they just, what basis are people being banned on? Why don't you investigate? Like, people just seem to just be so lazy nowadays that they don't want to investigate these things. They don't want to bother putting in, I'm not even talking about a lot of time, putting in the 15 minutes to go look into what's going on, why the censorship is egregious, why it's over the top. You just explained a story that happened to you yesterday over nothing.
Right.
That story is probably replicated thousands of times over for everything. But you also talked about how this is bleeding over from the virtual world into the real world, because you do have doxing, you do have people getting canceled from their jobs. I mean, there are serious real world repercussions. People are having not only being threatened personally, but their livelihoods, everything. And that's all as a result of this toxic culture that we've allowed to infest the internet. We've allowed, groups like Antifa and whoever them else to engage in doxing of anyone to the right of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And it's fine, but God forbid, you make a video, just a fun tongue-in-cheek video about something, then you're a criminal. You got to be taken down. We're going to demonetize you. We're going to take money away from independent, creative people. I mean, so much for the little guy, so much for backing up the independent and freelance artist or content creator when they're the ones getting banned and demonetized left and right because they're going against the grain. And isn't art going against the grain? Isn't that always how it's been? You always try to, change what the orthodoxy has been in art and media. I mean, that's how I thought it always was.
Yeah, I think that's kind of why I wouldn't even say the conservative movement, but Republicans have become kind of more of a culturally relevant idea, because they're the ones kind of having more fun right now. They're the ones kind of going against the grain and, taking risks in art and, and taking risks in comedy, which I'm a huge comedy fan just for that reason. Just speaking things that are irreverent, that's become some holy crime to leftism that you have to repent for in public, and you have to kind of go back on your words, and you have to apologize to every single person because you've said something that offended one singular person or one small little sector of the population. So I definitely see that there's a problem with that. And like my second favorite, Gavin has said, Gavin McInnes, he talks about taking things to the furthest conclusion, right? What's the furthest that you can take this idea? And the idea of censorship or even like the flagging on YouTube, you take that to its furthest conclusion, all of a sudden people are getting flagged for no reason by these fact checkers that maybe don't have the same moral standards or moral values as you, and there is zero you can do about it. Before you know it, people are completely excommunicated from the public square, and nobody has anything to say about it because everybody that would stand up for you is now deleted.
Right, exactly. It's like, first they came for the X, and they came for the Y. I didn't say anything. I wasn't an X. I wasn't a Y, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The old mantra goes. But right. It's true. It's true. And that's what's happening. They're trying to, be gatekeepers to the culture. They're trying to be gatekeepers for free thinking, because that's how you get control, when you have those means of communication. And the biggest growth that the Republican Party as an institution has seen and the conservative movement as an ideology has seen has been from these younger, newer, fringe, edgier commentators who came out of nowhere, who were not sponsored by Fox. They weren't sponsored by some big corporation. They just grew organically. They built up a following. And those are the people that are really winning over hearts and minds. I can't tell you how many people I know, who used to be Democrats, used to be liberals. They found, name whoever, some conservative YouTuber, some conservative somebody online who isn't really in the mainstream, but in alternative media. And then they change their whole view. That's why they're so scared, because they know when you have to fight an army of thousands and thousands and thousands of different creators who can give a different perspective, who can give a different opinion, who can dismantle a stereotype, then that kills their narrative. And they need to maintain their narrative to maintain power.
I think you're so right. I think that's why the link between the Democrat Party, the mainstream media, and just leftism in general is cracking down specifically on creators that are up and coming. They're not going after your Ben Shapiro's and stuff like that necessarily anymore, because they've gotten through the threshold.
And they have a critical mass.
Exactly. If you try to censor Ben Shapiro, the Daily Wire, there's no way that you're going to get away with that and look like you're doing the right thing. So you get a lot of these up and comers and a lot of these people who are providing really solid content with really well-founded evidence, and they're trying to get rid of them because they're going to replace the mainstream media. These, I think Ben Shapiro coined the term, I'm not sure, but replacement media is what he's calling it. And I think it's so true. They're coming after those jobs, and the only way to stop them is to use the power at their disposal. And right now that's big tech, that's Jack Dorsey and Mark Zuckerberg, and just using them and pretty much beating them into submission.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about protecting wealth. It's about protecting their concentration of power, and they're trying to maintain just their market dominance. I mean, that's almost sometimes it's not even political. Sometimes it just comes down to the Benjamins. Just
Right.
comes, no pun intended, with Ben Shapiro, but it comes down to just maintaining their market control. And the funny thing about it all is that these platforms grew. YouTube, Twitter, whatever it is, they grew to the levels they did, and they became such great places to be a part of and to contribute content to, because they were this free forum with exchange, with different ideas, with tons of people coming on and contributing to it. When it was a free speech platform,
Right.
that's what made it great. The more they've tried to control, the more they've tried to dominate, the more they've tried to tweak the algorithms, the more they've tried to punish up and comers. It's only made their platforms less and less relevant. It's only hurt them more. And now they're creating a third market, with all these different sites like Parler and Rumble. I mean, I have my issues with them mostly because they always have, for some reason, the easiest thing should be to make a nice UI and a nice design, and they always seem to have like designs from like 1997 or something.
I was just complaining about that today, actually.
It's just like, usually the hard stuff is behind. It's like the stuff behind the screen, like, the back end, the hardware, the tech, the code. Usually the front side is the easiest thing. Just making it a nice UI, making it look pretty. I don't understand why that's always a big problem.
It's the left brain thinking,
Yeah.
We want to be.
I'm thinking like the weaponized autism, like, these coders who are there, who are just like, oh no, this is great. We're going to do all these crazy things. And then you see it and it just looks like an HTML, it looks like it was made in text, in Notepad. And you're just like, what the hell is this, man? He's like, no, it's fine. It's fine. Who cares? Who cares? It's like, people care.
It looks like Angel Fire from 2001.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think on the tech side of things, one of the best things that big tech has done in general, well, I wouldn't even say best, like sneaky things, is that they've kind of convinced us that algorithms were necessary at all, right? When the big Instagram algorithm happened or was about to happen, I remember I was still like in the digital marketing industry. I wasn't talking about politics at all. But I remember every single digital marketer was saying, oh, if your content is great, it'll still get seen. Don't worry about it. Everything will be fine. And next thing you know, people are getting suppressed. And it's because the people that follow you can't see your stuff. Facebook is so pay to play right now. Like you said, it kind of comes down to the Benjamins, whereas, something like YouTube has become effectively a place where the more left leaning you are, the more your content will get seen, unless you're PewDiePie. There is no meritocracy necessarily. People have to go and actually search you out, scope you out in order to find your page. Right. Whereas, there's still kind of a lingering little hope with places like TikTok and even Instagram to an extent. But yeah.
Instagram, because they need to maintain the influencer market, and if they allowed you to say buy followers like you can on Facebook through ads and stuff like that, they can only monetize it through ads so much before the influencer game is killed. So they're playing a balancing act. But you mentioned TikTok. I mean, I have my issues with TikTok, the Chinese control. I wish Trump just simply had it given over to a U.S. company, because I think TikTok in and of itself could have been a major disruptor. Because
I will say this before not to cut you off.
Yeah.
Clapper is an equivalent kind of to TikTok.
Okay.
And they are coming out with
TikTok Clapper, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and they are coming out with like a creators, I guess, what do you call it, compensation feature where you get to pay, or they pay you for your content. So they're coming up with a bunch of cool stuff, and I like the UI there. I like the UX.
Good. All right, we got something going for us. But no, what I was saying is that, because TikTok was emerging, and it still is. I mean, it still is. It's massive, and it seemed to be like finally we were going to see a new tech platform that could take away market share, that could compete with the Facebook, with the Twitters, et cetera. And what was interesting is when I was used to go on it, I still go on it occasionally, is that there was really no censorship. Like you could put a conservative video up there, you could put a pro-Trump video up there, you could put an anti-Biden video. It will do amazing. It will get tons of views. You will see it. It will be organic. There was nothing artificial. There was nothing being suppressed. There was no algorithms. So yes, it had issues with China. Yes, it had issues with data. Yes, it had issues with privacy. All those concerns, by the way, apply to every tech company, because they're all messing with your data. They're all messing with your privacy. I understand the added level with China. That's why if Trump had, followed through with his plan to simply have it be taken over by an American company, it would have been a little better. But TikTok in of itself was a great disruptor. So when conservatives immediately dismissed it, I had issues with it, because I said, listen, your data's out there, your personal stuff is out there. The Chinese will get it, someone will get it, but you could take advantage of this platform to elevate our message. We shouldn't snub it immediately. We should find ways to take advantage of it, because this is the only place we have right now that, like you said, is not doing what YouTube is doing, is not doing what Twitter's doing. You could become, you could gain a ton of followers. You can gain a lot of reach organically, which is, organic is dead elsewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Organic is a thing of the past, I think. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just laughing. I agree with you.
Yeah, no. So I think that one of the ways that we have to move forward now is diversifying first of all, and also making sure that we have other alternatives that are not on social that we can kind of band together and do something that's physical in real life in person that will bring attention to these things. Because right now, I don't think censorship is at the forefront of the news cycle at all, but it needs to be because if we don't have our platforms, there's no way that we would have known about the Hunter Biden laptop.
Right.
There's no way we would have known any of these things that are going on. So I think it's the issue that's underlying all issues right now in our political dialogue, and people really need to talk about it way more. And I think we need to find a way to get around the big tech, I guess, monarchy and figure out how to bring this thing up to the general public, right? So that your average 50-year-old, mom or grandma will be able to see these things and say, oh, there's something fishy going on with social media.
Yep, exactly. And if alternative media can gain the reach that it deserves, that it should be getting organically, more people, like you said, will know the truth. They'll be able to make more informed decisions. I talk to a lot of people all the time who are Biden supporters, they're left wingers. They're not bad people. They just don't have the right information. They're reviewing, they're getting their news from sources, and they're getting their news from media that's been compromised, that has a massive bias. They're not getting a diversity of views. They're certainly not getting the full story. They're just getting, the talking points. They're getting regurgitated information. And alternative media is part of a healthy society. It's part of freedom of the press. It's part of freedom of speech. And if you kill their reach and you kill what they're getting, and you mentioned it before, I think there's a parallel that could be made with what happened with the election fraud. They'll say, oh, well, if your video on YouTube doesn't get the reach, don't blame the algorithms. It's just there's no demand for what you're saying. People don't like what you're saying. Not true. If people can't see it, it can never take off. It's the same thing with the election. It's like, oh, well, if your candidate lost, you must not have had the right support. You just did the wrong thing. It's like, no, not true. If there's suppression of votes, if there's voter fraud, you're killing what would be the organic demand, the real market demand, the real, affinity for whatever it is you're saying or promoting, either as a politician or a creator. So there's a lot of parallels there, because they're basically trying to imply that your lack of popularity or your lack of success in an election or your lack of views, your lack of followers is because your message is wrong, when they're the one making sure that no one actually hears your message.
Right. It's gaslighting at its finest.
Yes.
I think another thing that they're doing very, very well is that they're not only suppressing, but they're ruining reputations, right? So if you have a dialogue with somebody that's leaning left, or maybe they're just apolitical, they don't really care. What'll end up happening is maybe you'll send them a Project Veritas video, you send them a Daily Wire article, and they'll go and they'll look up the website. Oh, what is Project Veritas? And what comes up in Google right away is this is a right-wing misleading website that tells you this, and that. And all of a sudden, you have this person that was apolitical saying, oh, you're looking at conspiracy theories all day long. This person must be crazy. So places like Google are just as responsible, if not probably more, for setting the tone and setting the framework for the way that people interact. They're causing people to not be allowed to be an official news outlet because of some bias that they have towards them. And I think that's poisoning the well.
Agreed. I mean, I've been a victim of that. I've had dumb hit pieces published on me, and you could Google or find it. It's the first thing that comes up, and then you always have to be like, "Oh God, like listen, let me explain. Let me explain. This is ridiculous." And they do that to people because they want to destroy your character. So whatever you say is completely discredited, and you're already on the back foot. You could be like, "Oh, the Earth is round." It's like, well, is it really? Because I saw an article where they said you're a racist and you hate people, and it's just like, well, what are you talking about? It's like, oh, well, I don't want to hear anything else you have to say. So You're 100% right. It's defamation, it's libel, it's just attacking people nonstop, and it's hurting society, and it's really causing these divisions. It's spreading it out. But I'm glad you mentioned Google, because they're another one that's way more insidious than the social, because they'll manipulate the search results. So people will just Google something. It's like, what's Trump's view on X? And then they'll send the top 10 results will be the worst things ever that they catered.
CNN, Vox, MSNBC.
Yes, exactly. Well, you saw the case now. They're getting sued, right, by all these states, and it looks like it could be a good case.
I'm hoping. I'm hoping. I haven't been keeping up day to day with the election stuff because it's just, at first I was, and it's just gotten exhausting for me to be able to keep up with everything. So I'm waiting for the big news, the little chunks that come up, and seeing what happens. But I'm hopeful. I'm as hopeful as you can be.
Well, the problem is that we had these, these antitrust laws, and we used to enforce monopoly laws, like, and most industries they're enforced, but for some reason, again, with tech, because the regulators and the people in government just haven't caught up to, how it works. And then when they did finally figure out how it works, they just got bought off. You had companies like Google just dominate everything. Google dominates search. It dominates emails. It dominates videos. It dominates almost every aspect of the internet. I mean, it's a massive monopoly. I mean, like, who else do you go to for search? I mean, email, okay, there's other email providers, but Gmail is dominant. Who's the biggest video? It's definitely YouTube, which they own. You go to Facebook, they dominate, the biggest social media channel. They dominate Instagram. I mean, there is no competition. It's a few big companies that have it consolidated. I mean, in other industries, you could have a brand of toilet paper that has 20 different brands, and people sometimes have a preference, but you have internet and digital, and there's literally just one, two, or three in their specific fields. Like Twitter is the conversational platform. Facebook is like the more personal platform. YouTube is the video platform, and that's it. There's no competition. I mean, how different is that if I went to a communist country? It's like, all right, this is the state video network. This is the state email network. This is the state conversational network. It's like the same thing, just with cooler names.
And that's where my I guess qualms with other conservatives is, where they say that we're just got to get up and leave. Where are we going to leave to? There's nowhere to leave to. What's going to be? I'm going to use DuckDuckGo, or what is it? DuckDuckGo.
Yeah, whatever it is, something stupid. Yeah.
I'm going to use Rumble for the rest of my favorite podcasts aren't on Rumble. I can't go there.
Yeah.
So I have to be able to stand here and fight for whatever is going on here, and hopefully cause some damage. Hopefully, cause some change.
Yeah, it's corporatism. It's not the free market. It's not capitalism. It's corporatism. It's a few big companies who are in bed with the state, who get benefits from the state, who are protected by the state, who are basically operating like a cartel, and they're dominating an industry. And that's not free. That's not a healthy society. And you know what's funny? You were talking about the left and these liberals and what they used to say. They're hypocrites. Because if you had gone back 20, 30 years ago, the left and the liberals, they were all about free speech. They were all almost anti-PC. I mean, the biggest comedians, we were talking about stand-up, they were all lefties. They would make fun of people. I remember watching stand-up on the Comedy Central growing up. All it was one person of one race making fun of other people, making fun of other people, and it was funny and it was healthy.
Yeah.
That's all kill. Now the left is not for free speech. They're for big corporations. They're for war. They're for protecting these multi-billionaires who back them up. I mean, they have no values anymore. And it seems like the right have become what the old left used to be in many ways on some of these topics. It's kind of crazy how things have flipped.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I think it's dripping in irony, the way the left went from being pro free speech all the way live and let live to now pro censorship, like blatantly pro censorship. We want you gone. We want you banned. We don't want you to speak at all. We want to make sure that your message is never heard, via, Alex Jones and all those people. We just want you erased from society. We don't want you to be able to use Venmo, PayPal, Uber, Lyft, nothing. And that to me is horrifying. Like, imagine if you say something that trips up the wrong person, and all of a sudden you can't use any of that. You can't even get a bank account. How is that going to look? All because, you love your country and you have different
views. Yeah. You have a different view on trade policy. Now we're going to make sure that you have to live in a cave. Like, it's insane. I mean, this is unpersonating. This is stuff out of Stalinist Russia. This is stuff out of China with their social credit scores. I mean, everyone watches Black Mirror on Netflix. All these wine moms at home in the suburbs, like, oh my God, did you see the latest episode of Black Mirror? It's like you're living in Black Mirror. You're allowing Black Mirror to happen because you go and watch a show like Black Mirror, and then you turn around. It's like, oh my God, we have to ban these conservatives. They're setting these disgusting views on the internet. I don't want my little Jimmy to hear it. It's like, shut the hell up, because you're creating this. You're creating this situation. It starts with the easy people. It starts with, Alex Jones, whatever. It starts with whoever, and then it expands to everyone. Next thing you know, they're banning the most milquetoast people because they basically said, it's like, hey, I still think there is biology and there are two genders. It's like, all right, you're gone. Like, you can't say anything.
It's really easy for somebody that's not involved in this day to day to see people who claim censorship is a thing and just not believe it and say, oh, you're just being extra, you're just complaining, you're lying. But not only have I now, as of yesterday, firsthand experience of censorship, but I know people who not only were banned off of Facebook 3 times, Instagram, YouTube, all at once. I know people personally, and I've seen all the evidence, but they've lost their actual jobs. They've worked in banking and they worked in finance, and they got fired not only by their manager, but they got fired from corporate of that company which is crazy, all because of the things that they posted online. Now, I could understand if the things they posted online were illegal or were not allowed or just completely out of the fray of just being a decent human, but these are just simply political opinions. You know, we're supposed to be able to talk politics. If we can't talk politics on the public square where everybody goes to talk, where are we going to have these conversations?
Exactly. And it's a healthy discussion to have. And you're right. I mean, you know, people get canceled from their jobs. I mean, I think I've lost jobs because of my politics. I've lost opportunities because of my politics. I mean, that's the consequence of being open and conservative. It comes with a cost. So I have massive respect for anyone who opens up, uses their real name. I mean, I always get into Twitter fights with online trolls, especially on the left, because it's like, you're on the left, you know, you have the majority of everything. Like, you're a leftist, you have nothing to worry about. Why would you hide your name? Why would you hide your face? Like, what are you so worried about? You're never going to get canceled. You're never going to lose your job. Nothing bad's ever going to happen to you. But
whenever I get a troll, I just ask them to go on IG Live with me, and then they stop answering.
That's right. Yeah. Show your face. Show your face. Show your name, because it's really easy to act a certain way, act tough, act whatever when you have this wall of anonymity. And that's why I have massive respect for anyone. There are people who are more libertarian. There are people that are even, you know, like people like in the Tim Pool type of aspect. They're still lefties, but they're very pro-free speech. They're very anti-establishment lefties. I respect them a lot. Even they I respect them massively because they come out, they use the real name, but they would lose everything in corporate America, which is completely dominated by the left, and Republicans don't seem to understand that. But this has been awesome. We covered a ton of ground here. I definitely want to have you come back on again, because I'm so sick about talking about the elections, and this was fun. We get to talk about like culture. We get to talk about, you know, tech. We get to talk about what's going on. But I'll pass the last words off to you, and just let us know, let the viewers know where they can follow you and how they can learn more.
For sure. So my friend Morgan Ariel and I started a movement called Censor You Movement. You can find us on Twitter or Instagram, the Censor You Movement. And we're pretty much telling the stories of people that have been banned. We're asking people to send in videos and tell us their story. You know, how was big tech banning you, and what exactly happened? And we want to post those things. We want to do live in-person rallies like we did in DC a couple of weeks ago. And we want to continue this and bring it as far as possible with the right resources in order to take the proper actions. As for me personally, you can find me on Instagram or YouTube. I prefer you find me on YouTube, Angel Quiroz, just the way it's spelled here, on Instagram, _Angel Quiroz. Thanks so much for having me, brother.
No, absolutely. I'm glad you came on. I want to do this again. And to all the listeners, please leave a review. Please subscribe. If you're on iTunes, definitely give us 5 stars. We're up on all the different podcast networks now. We're going to have more episodes coming to you soon. So stay tuned for the next episode of the Waxcast.